Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here at Tim's Nation, and today we're going to have a little conversation. Talk about two factions that have drawn very, very, very similar conversations, but I haven't seen much comparison, and that is the Grey Knights and the Necron Hypercrypt Legion. Both of these armies present a very new playstyle to the Warhammer 40K universe, one that we haven't really seen in previous editions, by being able to lift units off the field and replace them back down, giving you a lot of tools at your disposal when playing this game, especially with things like tactical objectives. Even if you choose fixed, these armies, these factions, can give you a lot of tools to be able to achieve those goals and score a lot of points. And with that, there's been a lot of comparisons. Grey Knights were the first at the beginning of the edition, when the indexes came out, one of the first armies to be able to do this, with Space Marines having similar utilities and other armies having units that could do this. And then comes the Necron Codex and the Hypercrypt Legion, and we are now introduced to a second faction that their detachment can do this. This is often referred to as uppy-downy armies, which personally I'm not a fan of that phrase. So instead we're just going to call these a teleport force. I like that better. Sorry. That's what I'll be referring to this in the army today. But since these factions have been compared so much so, where Hypercrypt, in a lot of ways, I've heard it referred to as, oh, the Grey Knight style faction. Let's talk about this a little bit in the comparison of Hypercrypt and Grey Knights. For those who haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. We are growing, and I'm hoping to increase this very, very soon. Been spending a lot of work and a lot of time researching different avenues and different things we can do here on the channel. I've talked about that in a previous video, so I won't spend a lot of time on that, but please subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell to get notified on all the content we bring you here, including our battle reports, where Lane and myself will be combating this week. And I believe I will be probably trying out that Necron Phalanx, the character-based overlords, and what's often referred to as the Silent King's attachment. Although I don't think I'm going to take the Silent King because he doesn't really gain anything. It's kind of weird. He doesn't have overlord capabilities, and it's just kind of weird. But regardless, that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're going to talk about the Hypercrypt and the Grey Knights and their comparison. So first, we're going to jump back to, I said at the beginning of this video, this is a new style of play. Previously, the Grey Knights had the ability to teleport around the field. They had deep strike options all over their army, which were excellent. Great options up until last edition. Last edition, with the way that psychic powers worked, Grey Knights really didn't have a reliable way to do this. You could cast Gate of Infinity and fail it, and even by spending command points, even with enhancements and abilities, you still couldn't guarantee it, which to me as a Grey Knight player left a very, very, very sour taste in my mouth. So seeing this detachment that just initially and immediately is able to do this stuff, no psychic powers required, no extra dice rolls, you just pick up and go, love it, love it. One of my favorite ways to play the game. And that's one of the reasons I think I've had success with Grey Knights, is because it speaks to me on a deep and intimate level. Then we get the Hypercrypt Legion. So why would Hypercrypt not speak to me as much? Well, I like it for Grey Knights. I like it for Grey Knights, and also I love Necron Canoptic, so the Canoptic Court is just one that really appeals to me. And I also am not a person who likes playing the top meta armies. I like to kind of dial it back a bit. I like that Necrons is strong, but I'd prefer to play something that's not the coup de grace, the creme de la creme, the top of the line. I like to have something a little more in the fitting. Not to mention, I do feel Hypercrypt is a little more of a, how to put this, there's a little more of a combo player's dream out of that one. And it's weird because actually, like, that's kind of my style, is playing into some of these combo-based armies and stuff like that. But I don't know, I feel like with Grey Knights, and Grey Knights being such an army that I really do hold true to my heart, I feel like if I want to teleport around the field, I'd like to do it with Grey Knights. Probably just a personal preference, because as we're going to talk about in this video, there's a lot of pros and cons for both factions, which I don't think it's talked about enough, especially considering the fact that a lot of times Hypercrypt is described as the Grey Knight faction, the Grey Knight style Necron faction, or other similar verbiage to compare the two. Now, moving forward, we now move into 10th edition. And one thing that I've said to many people, and some may understand this reference and not, is I'm starting to feel like, well, I've been feeling like 10th edition plays a lot like competitive Magic the Gathering, or MTG. And where I draw the comparison in this right now is Grey Knights, to me, play a lot like mono blue control. And for those who don't know, within Magic, there is, much like with 40K, they have different names for different deck designs. And some names or deck designs over the ages and years and years and years of the games have resurfaced and come back through different formations. And one that has been a staple is mono blue control. It's a style where you play a single color, which is blue, and your attempt is to control the entire board state so much that you win the game. Whether it's playing spells that remove your opponent's creatures from the field, stopping spells from being played, or just drawing cards to constantly have weapons at your disposal to win the game that way. It usually is a slower style of play, because obviously if it's a fast style, everyone would play it and it would make the game no fun. But it plays slow, it plays defensive in an attempt to, as the name suggests, control the game. I feel like Grey Knights show a lot of symbolism to that as well, especially early in the edition. They lack a lot of damage output, but their goal is to control the game, control the tempo, control the flow, and most importantly, control the scoreboard. Where Necrons come in. Now, much like in Magic the Gathering, some standard, which is the newest sets, the newest era of cards, which is a smaller pool, there is times where other colors can put down a mono color control. And for me, a lot of that is what Necrons look like, a mono black control in that manner. Mono black control in Magic typically uses a lot more creature destruction. So if the game has a lot of creatures in it at the times, it does a good job of being able to remove that and control it without expending too many resources, being able to eliminate multiple creatures off one card, or having stacked abilities that are able to clear the field. Also, hand destruction, destroy your opponent's hand. Typically blue control is always something that exists. It may not be the best, it may not be the top of the meta, but it always is there, and there's always an option for it just because of how the color is structured. Similar to Grey Knights. It's just how it's structured in that control aspect. But every once in a while, someone else comes along that's able to dethrone that spot because of, in most sense, where the meta is. And that's a lot of where I feel like Hypercrypt is. Hypercrypt plays like the mono black control. It's able to do a lot of similar things that Grey Knights are able to do, but it does it more from the damage and remove your opponent aspect. And that's, again, something else that we're going to touch on in this video. So this is kind of a time frame where I feel like Grey Knights sit at a point where they are able to do and play this game potentially better than most armies. So why is it that Hypercrypt is number one, where Grey Knights Grey Knights have moved up the meta race ladder as of recent, and especially with the new Dread Knight weapons, the Dread Knights are definitely going to help that Grey Knight win percentage, especially in my tests that I've seen. That upgrade is, I love it. I love it. That side cannon is beautiful. The boost to the hammer, everything about it, awesome. So why is it that if I feel like Grey Knights do this better, why is it that Hypercrypt is winning more? How can I sit here and say Grey Knights do teleport, shunting, teleporting, uppy downy better than Hypercrypt, if Hypercrypt is winning events, winning Las Vegas Open, winning all these things, how can I say that? So let's break this down, and we're going to break it down into 3 parts. First, the basic data sheets. And with that in the data sheets, not the data sheets, the detachment ability. Next, stratagems and enhancements. And last is going to be the data sheets. So first, let's talk about the detachment rule, because this is really quick. They both have a very similar rule. Similar, not the same. The Grey Knight rule allows you to pick 3 units up in assuming competitive play of 2,000 points with Strike Force games. The Grey Knights allow you to pick 3 units up. So does the Hypercrypt unit. There's one critical difference. The Hypercrypt Legion puts those units in strategic reserve, whereas the Grey Knights do not. It picks them up off the table, and then during the next turn, they come back. So this is kind of a back and forth. The Hypercrypt, therefore, you would technically not need to place the unit back on the table. They could be in strategic reserve. And since the rule in the Leviathan package states that any unit that starts the game in strategic reserve has to arrive by the 3rd battle round, this is not maintained true for units that leave the field. So a unit could leave the field on turn 3 and stay in strategic reserve all the way till turn 5. So this could potentially allow some plays that the Hypercrypt Legion could do, where you could fake. You could fake a play by picking up a unit and not bringing it back down. Albeit in 40K, that doesn't seem to be the most common and relevant situation, but you could still do it. Number 2, because this unit goes into strategic, this means that some missions that require you to roll a dice on turns 1 and 2 and 3, or 1 and 2, to see if your units become available, would now potentially hurt this detachment. So, in a nutshell, the ability is very, very similar. There is a very, very minor tweak to it that's different. And I don't feel like the Necron being able to hold a unit back is all that relevant, especially since if you don't need the unit on the field and you want to, you can hide it somewhere and then pick it up in your next turn and do it again. So I don't see that being as important. I feel like the Grey Knight, the fact that the Grey Knight one doesn't pass through strategic reserve, at least at this time, at the time of recording this video, that means that I would give the leg up to the Grey Knight one. Marginally. Now let's go over into the enhancements and the stratagems, because this is the meat and potatoes. This is the big chunk of where a lot of this settles in. So first of all, in the enhancements for the Necrons, and we're not going to go through piece by piece. We're going to generalize these pretty much and just throw them in here. Enhancements, you can take an additional unit into reserve. Huge, basically an auto, almost and always an auto include. That's a great utility. +1 to hit, or full rerolls to hit if the unit arrived at reserve. Okay, pretty much the entire arc, whoever's going to be doing that. So you give a character, put in a unit, now you have a really strong fire base, whether it's locusts or immortals, whichever you may choose. An auto advance 6, not as necessary when we have things like the transdimensional overlord, but okay, it's an enhancement there. And then last is to give a unit deep strike. That one's pretty big. That one's definitely big, because now that means that any unit that can be joined by a character, therefore, could have deep strike. Now, it's good. It's great. I can't say anything bad about it. But there's also another way to basically give a unit deep strike, and that is off one of the stratagems, which is Cosmic Precision. So I'm going to jump right into it. Cosmic Precision is by far the best stratagem that the Hypercrypt Legion has, and I will fight this one tooth and nail. 1 command point, any unit in your army that you picked up can now be placed back on the field 3 inches away from your enemy. Beautiful, beautiful. This is what makes Catan so strong. This is what makes the Monolith run. Because yes, you can be put within 3 inches. You don't have to. You can drop 7 inches away or 6 inches and all that stuff. it doesn't, it's not, you won't have to be 3 inches anywhere within that. But now it breaks that boundary of that 9-inch gap, which really allows units like the monolith to find spots that it might not normally be able to due to its size. And then especially Catan, I mean, you go and drop I saw this at the team event. I've done it. I did it with my Grey Knights, especially with Grey Knights having a similar ability, being able to drop a unit within 3 inches and just land there and just putting it in someone's backfield and go, hi guys, here I am. Oh, don't move away. I'm going to overwatch you with incinerators. For Necrons, it's, hi guys, I'm a Catan. Here, I'm going to be 3 inches away from you. Hope you can destroy me, because if not, I'm going to smack you with whatever weapon I'm carrying. Big plays there. Big plays there can be happening out of that, especially when your opponent's not expecting it. Your early game, or even late in the game too. Huge stratagem. As far as the rest of the stratagems that are available, you have a lot of stratagems that really help boost the monolith and make you want to take the monolith. Being able to give it an invuln, using its dimensional gateway to bring units through closer. This detachment really says play a monolith. Now, it's not required. I've been running a lot of my detachments without the monolith because I do see some handicap weaknesses with the monolith. Now, LVO was just one with a monolith. Yes. That was also one with player place terrain. And I feel like the meta is going to shift and the monolith is going to have a little more of a difficult time making some of these plays. But again, it is still, I don't have enough data behind the monolith right now with where the meta has shifted to really say that. And so I won't attest to that one, but I do feel like the monolith is strong. It is a very powerful component in this build, but I would not say it's required. I feel like this detachment in its own right and its own strength can run without a monolith. However, if you do that, then you're losing a lot of access to some stratagems that you could use with it. Now, also, one of the other disadvantages that I personally feel for the monolith is the fact that one of the best dimensional corridor, which lets you charge with units that come out of its gateway, so now you're really able to hit your opponent hard with that one turn, is 2 command points. And if you're playing fixed missions, fixed secondaries, you're going to need a way to generate command points. And even if you're playing tactical, you still need a way to get command points. And that means there's only one choice, and that's Emotech. So you're not only just buying the monolith for its 360 points, don't quote me on it, I believe 360, but then you have to spend plus 100 plus points on Emotech. That's almost, we're getting to a quarter of our points just for that sentiment of the combo. So that monolith really better carry its weight. Granted, death rays are awesome. I like them a lot, and I would definitely run a death ray monolith. It's a lot of points to invest in it. So, neither here nor there. If you want to run the monolith and still do it, very strong, very good, very powerful. If you don't want to run the monolith, it's plausible. You can do it without running the monolith. I personally feel. But then you will reduce some of the stratagems. All in all, to summarize this up, to then jump over to the sun portion for the Grey Knights, the stratagems are good. You have one that is absolutely amazing. But then the rest of the stratagems do kind of lack a bit of luster outside of the monolith. Now for the Grey Knights. First, the Grey Knight enhancements. First to the fray. I personally now think that is a necessary one. Otherwise, in matchups where you go first, it doesn't give you, you don't have enough board presence, especially with the expensive units that we're going to talk about at the end of this. So I think First Fray is really necessary. Sigil of Exigence, amazing. You shoot me, I jump away, great. Dread Knight, character in a unit, anything, great. Inescapable Wrath, +1 charge, hit or miss. You don't really need it. It can work. I've been running it on my Dread Knight. I like it. It's cheap. Being able to have +1 charge out of Deep Strike, really cool. But hit or miss, you can run without it. And then last, you have the, my gosh, drawing a blank on its actual name because I never run it. Dominica Liber Demonica. Yeah, that's just for demons, and it's not even really that good. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of attacks, +1 to wound, and each time the bearer makes a melee attack. So it's just that model, yeah. So the other 3 are great. But then the stratagems. With the changes to the Grey Knight stratagems and the fact that now it includes the teleport assault or advancing and all that stuff, the Grey Knight stratagems are so much more versatile than the Necron ones. Necron ones, you're looking at it very linear. 1 CP, cosmic precision, a lot of times. Given the fact of most games, 2 command points, unless you have Emotech, 1 command point is going to be dedicated to cosmic precision. So the other command point, it could go to a 4-up invuln for your monolith, reanimate from reserve, you know, and some of that other stuff, but definitely that 1 strat is going to be going to cosmic precision because it's so good. Grey Knights can do the same thing. They can drop within 3. Very nice. They also have Mist of Deimos. You get too close, you get within 9, I'm going to pick that unit up and get out of the field. Very strong, especially for the cost of the units. You can drop in, and for 2 command points, you can count as being a lone op. Also, super strong strat that they can't shoot you unless they're within 12. True Silver Armor. True Silver Armor for 1 command point, and it's not a battle tactic, so your opponent can't even vect it or really interact with it, and you're looking at an extra, you have Armor of Contempt. That's not a battle tactic. Some are like, oh, it's not battle tactic, can't get it for free. I'd rather know that I need to spend 1 command point than be worried about it going up to 2. And especially with an army that everything is a 2-up save, so good, so good. And then Radiant Strike. Radiant Strike is missable, but I have really been liking it for free on my Terminators just to be able to pop Devastating Wounds. That one's great. And then Death from the Warp is just amazing. Being able to advance and then have +1 to hit and counting all your weapons of assault is only for the cost of a command point. Still with Deep Strike, still with all that stuff, so good. So right now you might be asking yourself, be like, this guy really feels like Grey Knights are so much better. These strats, the enhancements, even the niche of just like the 1%, the 0.00001% better that the actual detachment ability is, or at least in my feelings. And granted, this is all opinion-based. This is all opinion-based. This is my personal opinion on how I feel playing both of these armies. But there is one crucial part that even with the strength of how these stratagems, I personally think the Grey Knight stratagems have more depth, they have more playability, and that's where that mono blue control aspect comes in over the Hypercrypt mono black control. This is where right now in the meta and in the game, the Necrons take over, and that is data sheets. The Necrons have so much more depth, so much more. You have units like the Death Marks that are cheap for 5 guys that can deep strike. You have the Hexmark Destroyer, single model that can deep strike, very cheap. You have many combinations of character loadouts that you can do to have different units. Like I personally love, for the cost of what it cost me for a squad of Interceptors out of Grey Knights, I can take 5 Immortals with a Chronomancer and drop in, shoot, and move onto objective in the same ways that I was able to do with the Interceptors for cheaper. Now, the Grey Knights do have that kind of Swiss Army knife effect. They can fight, they can shoot, but they're not the best fighters, and they're not the best shooters. And their guns, up until recently with the Dread Knight, have been less than impressive. They can do very well against infantry. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of armies, Dark Eldar being one of them, that do not want to face down Grey Knight shooting. but it is not a higher point of the meta. And because it's not that high of a point of the meta, that means that the Grey Knight shooting doesn't push through. Also, the fact that the creativity behind units is very limiting. You have a character that can join a unit. Terminator with Terminator bodies. That's it. Interceptors don't get a character at all. Purifiers have two options, and one of them is Crow, and that's basically the only option I see most people take. So that lack of depth, because yes, you have all the Imperium vehicles, but those are commissioned. We get those; they get shipped to us. We buy those off Amazon. These are the actual Grey Knight ones that can deep strike and everything around. Very limiting. You know, you have Strike, Interceptors, Purifiers, Purge. Then you have Terminators, Paladins. A character that can join each one, a single character. And then you have Dread Knights and Grandmaster Dread Knights. That's about it. I might be missing one in there. I don't think I am, but that's about it. Yeah, there's a laundry list of characters, but again, one character per. Unless it's a Libby, most of them don't run solo. Well, Grandmaster, but that's not a leader. So lack in that also not only is the lack of depth, but lack of weapons. The side cannon, the infantry-based side cannon is not a good gun. Strength 9, AP 1, flat 2 damage sounds decent, but when you look at how many different ways armies have access to things like Armor of Contempt or just simply cover, suddenly that AP 1 doesn't mean anything. The Strength 9 is really at a fold where a lot of Toughness 10 vehicles just kind of shrug it off. And the 2 damage, it's okay, it's 2 damage. It's 2 damage. When you look at the Incinerator is a great weapon, awesome weapon, and the Silencer just really falls flat. And that's really it. I literally gave all of the infantry special weapons right there. But then when we look at the Necrons, now it's just so much there. Do you want to run Lich Guard? You can. Do you want to run a Lich Guard brick? 10 of them. You can. Again, the Monolith, the Catans that we've seen pop up, Immortals, Warriors, Xeris. The versatility behind the Hypercrypt means that you have the ability to tweak things. In comparison, List Constructions versus the 2, List Construction in Grey Knights is comparable to my child's first workbench. There's this giant plastic screw, and then there's one place that you can put it, and then maybe a second place, and that's it. And then there's a hammer with a nail, and there's one place you could put it, and maybe a second. With Hypercrypt, this is like we're building an Erector set. And for though, yes, I'm dating myself with the Erector set, but instead you have this piece of metal. And granted, they can all go into this place and build you your Millennium Falcon or whatever it is you're building. But you also could tweak it a little bit and put the screws in a different place and come up with something else that may look like that spaceship, but at the end of the day, be something unique and creative to your own. Grey Knights, it's limiting. And with the Grey Knights being very limiting, it allows people to plan for that, to plan for the Grey Knight matchup and know when they go into that matchup how it's going to play out. One of two ways. Either play defensive because the Grey Knight army has the potential to put the damage on the table and put down units like Dark Eldar, like we've had recently with Dark Eldar and Votann and some of those armies, or you know that the weapons are not going to be enough. And you push back and you push the Grey Knights back into a corner and cover the field where there's no place for them to play the game. Necrons, on the other hand, the Hypercrypt, you're going to have to figure it out right then and there at that point of the table what those units intend on doing. And even if you think you know what they do, they can switch it up. So where the Hypercrypt may not play as well off some of the stratagems, and again, I believe that the Grey Knights, all in all, their detachment, their stratagems, and everything else is just hands down better than the Hypercrypts. The Hypercrypt data sheets, the access that the Hypercrypt has for data sheets and abilities is what puts it by and puts it far, far past, well, not far, far, but definitely ahead of the Grey Knights in that aspect. So what do Grey Knights need to fix that and catch up? Is it more data sheets? I'd say more versatility behind the character layouts would be one, and maybe some tweaks to the guns. Now, it makes me sound kind of cynical there because we just got a huge upgrade with the Grandmasters and the Dread Knights, and that's working. I mean, it's been working for me fine, and I think that's fine for right now. But it's just in comparison of some of the infantry. I'd like to see that to be able to play some of the infantry stronger as well. Where Necrons, you can really get fancy with it. You can get really fancy with it. Like my previous Hypercrypt video, I had someone comment on how big brain the list was. And I don't mean that as a narcissistic compliment to myself, but those are the armies that you're really trying to be engaged all the way through. You know, it's just, there's a lot of little intricate things, and it's not necessarily trying to beat your opponent, it's just trying to win the game. Where my Grey Knight list is just more power, more power, more power. I'm going to hit you, I'm going to keep hitting you, and keep hitting you, keep hitting you until you break. The Necrons, you can play it that way too. You know, the Monolith, it puts out damage. Locust Heavies, they put out damage. A lot of different options put out damage. So the Hypercrypt is a Swiss Army knife that has more tools at its disposal. The Grey Knights, Swiss Army knife behind their stratagems, but the data sheets are a little lacking. So that's all in all, that's kind of where I feel with it. I've had a couple conversations with some people about this where we were talking about a team tournament recently, and talking with Nico about it, actually. And he was saying that with this team tournament, it's like, oh, you should play Hypercrypt, you should play this. And I was telling him, like, I don't know, Grey Knights might be where it's better at for a team event. Since we're going into that matchup, I don't need an all-comers. I need the army that's able to guarantee to do exactly what I want it to do. And Grey Knights have more versatility behind that. Where Necrons in a competitive format such as a tournament settings have a better capability of building that all-comers list to be able to face anything that they take on the battlefield. Oh, this has been something I've been thinking about for a while. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I look forward to seeing the comments and seeing what people might also think is like, oh, you know what, there's also this, there's that, there's this, and see how you feel. End result, my vote is, teleport-wise, the Grey Knights is the better faction. Overall, competitive-wise, and playing Warhammer in the highest competitive level, got to give it up to the Necrons. They're winning better on the table. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.